Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I am Chris White, and I'm delighted to welcome this week's guest, Miss Pam Dunn. Pam, you have such an interesting background to me because you were a sales engineer, then you were a sales engineer, an SE leader for a while, and now you've been back in the field as a sales engineer, an individual contributor. I'm so excited to welcome you, and I can't wait to hear some of your stories. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I feel completely honored to be on your show, having watched many of the episodes that you've put out there. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about all things pre-sales. You can probably get me to never stop talking about that. So I'm excited.
Well, and that's why I reached out to you and to let the folks know. So you and I officially met for the first time, and I'll put that in air quotes, last week, of course, on a Zoom call. But I think you and I had felt like we'd known each other because we've exchanged, I think, LinkedIn messages, and I've liked your posts and you've liked my posts. I know you're familiar with my book. So it was a delight to meet you. And by the way, folks, I tell this to everyone. These programs, they are live, first of all, completely unscripted, unrehearsed, and a little bit unpredictable. So, I just love doing these. So Pam, I know you're with Contentful now, but do you mind just taking a minute and sort of properly introducing yourself?
Yeah, I would love to do that. First of all, again, thank you. Who wouldn't sign up for something that's completely live, unscripted, talk about all things pre-sales? I jumped right on, and as you mentioned, it was really great to finally meet you, although we have never done it face-to-face, so there you go. But Zoom was cool, and as you said, I do feel like I have known you for a very long time, as strange as that sounds. Yes, today I'm at Contentful. I am part of an amazing group of pre-sales folks who hopefully are all joining us today. Super excited.
I sure hope so.
I hope so too. They better be. They know, I'm not paying them to say anything great, but I'm looking forward to shout outs to them too. Yeah, as you mentioned, when you said I would be on this LinkedIn Live with you, I've been doing pre-sales for quite a long time, although I probably never say the words 30 ever because it makes me feel super old. But yeah, I've been in technology for, gosh, so long. And my career has taken me through many different types of roles, as you mentioned. The great news about that is it's always kept me learning, which I love so much about it, right? It's the constant learning. You never know everything. Wouldn't that be great if we just showed up and, gave our amazing performance of a demo and then we walked away and collected the check? That would be great.
Right. But by the way, I sort of thought that's the way it worked when I first got into the role. So
I did too, actually. I was like, I'm going to make all kinds of money. This sounds great. I'm going to jump on planes. Yeah. Definitely didn't turn out to be quite like that, but certainly the journey's been so exciting, and I feel completely blessed to still be doing this as an individual contributor. There's lots of amazing resources out there, as I am absolutely excited for this next chapter of these pre-sales folks that are coming into the business, and excited to see where they take it, because as you and I know, we had to learn things the hard way on our own. So yeah, looking forward to talking.
So true. By the way, you already have a fan saying hello, Mariano Alvarez. Mariano, it's nice to see you. Thanks for chiming in. By the way, I'll invite any of you who happen to be listening, if you care to say hello to myself or Pam, if you have any questions for either of us, by all means, please ask. So Pam, honestly, in all sincerity, you were pre-sales before pre-sales was cool. Long before pre-sales was cool. So how did you find yourself in a pre-sales, and was it, what was it called even back then? Was it application engineer or something of that nature?
I started out, I worked for this amazing software company that was based in Manchester, New Hampshire. So shout out to my old Coda Financial friends and colleagues from the day. We sold core financials. We were competing in an industry that was, just branching out from the mainframe days. That's how far back that goes. So yeah, I did all things in a software company, and then finally realized as I was working with sales that, oh, this sales thing sounds really cool. And we might have started calling ourselves sales engineers.
Oh yeah, so you were one of the original sales engineers. Yeah,
we actually had a little sales in there, and then we were sort of figuring out what we were going to call it. We actually hired a ton of like ex-accounting folks and CPAs.
Interesting.
And they all figured out how to do. So we were all learning together. It was actually really great. But when I made the jump from there to go to a really big company, I went to PeopleSoft in the day, and we called ourselves application consultants then. So that was really different.
Interesting.
Application consultant.
My first role was a quote. How funny is this? An AE, an application engineer. That's what we were called, application engineers. And I think it was AEs and AMs. So the AEs were technical, and the AMs were the account managers, and they were the sales folks. By the way, speaking of sales folks, am I correct that San Kim is one of the sales folks that you work with?
I love San. Yes, I work very closely with her. She's a rock star, and I love collaborating with her. So yeah, she's one of my account execs today.
So we're going to talk about partnering with sales. And San, thank you for chiming in and say hello. Let's start out with some of what you have learned along your journey in working with sales. Let's start out by, did you make any mistakes early in your career when it comes to working with sales?
Yeah, it's funny when I reread some chapters of your book, I see lots of mistakes that I made along the way. And I'm so thankful that you wrote a book about it so that we can all look back at it and say, oh yeah, I might still do some of those today. Yeah, I think it was, the sales reps or the account execs that I work best with were those that, we just realized right from the get-go that we had, you always have some kind of chemistry. I mean, as corny as that sounds, you just find a way to collaborate, which is what I love about the AEs that I have today. And I really I just love collaborating with them. It's really less about selling. For me, it's actually been less about selling software, although I guess that sounds corny too. It's really been about this, understanding our common goal. So understanding the problems, right? Understanding, what we have to do, what each of our role is, because we play different roles. And I think, when I started out, I had grandiose ideas of what I was going to do with this illustrious career. Once I kind of figured it out. And then of course there's tons of personalities you work with, some of it's kind of crazy. You don't always gel with everyone, and you just try to figure it out, right? So you're just trying to understand people, I guess, first and foremost, and then how do I work within the way that other people like to work? I think that's always been, maybe more of a strength of mine, or sometimes a weakness, because when you get something really good and then you meet somebody new, you're trying to kind of fit them in there, but it doesn't always work out that way. So I think, the longer you work with someone, the easier it is to figure out how, that's supposed to work. So yeah, I probably made tons of mistakes in the beginning, just trying to figure out, what do I do? What do you do? Yeah. I remember being in the days where, some of these were day-long demos back in the ERP days. And so, sometimes you'd have an AE who would, go out to take a phone call or, leave the room and kind of leave you at it on your own. So yeah, those were kind of fun days where you were like, hey, I need you in the room. Yeah.
For sure. Well, and it's interesting. I don't know if you experienced this when you first got into the role, but I think I underestimated just how hard it was to be in their position. I underestimated how hard it was to prospect, to get the meeting, to come across authentic and sincere, because the truth is most people tend to sort of question the integrity, or they tend to doubt salespeople or distrust their motives, whereas we come in as the expert, right? And we're given the benefit of the doubt, whether we deserve it or not, right? Did you ever make that mistake a little bit by maybe early in your career underestimating just how difficult their job is?
Yeah, I think I had to learn that really. And I think, obviously it takes some years under your belt to realize that, both roles are very different.
Mm,
And it's a lot, to be able to prospect and be able to really uncover opportunities, when although sometimes it feels like they think we just show up and make magic happen too. So I think it's just again that
right.
collaboration, but I certainly had done it as well. And when I became a pre-sales leader, I had to counsel other pre-sales folks on,
Mm,
hey, guess what? The grass isn't always greener on the other side here. Their role is really hard too. And we all know quotas hanging over your head don't make it any easier, right? As a pre-sales person, you don't always have the direct quota. Sometimes you're sort of you roll up under a quota, but certainly they,
mm,
at the end of the day, are the ones that have to be accountable for that. So,
yeah.
yeah, there's just different pressures, for both on either side of that. So, yeah, definitely, I
Yeah.
made lots of mistakes. Or thinking, well, you have no idea what I do, and then I had no idea.
Exactly. So what is the advice then that you gave when you were in a management role and you had team members coming to you frustrated with their sales counterparts? They did this or they did that. What was some of the advice that you gave the people that you worked with in those, in that situation?
Yeah, I always laugh about this. When I became a new manager, the first thing I said was, "Wow, I was a really easy praise salesperson. I didn't complain about a lot of these things. So what made it happen? What's your problem?"
Why can't everybody be like I was when I was
Why
in the
can't
role, right?
everyone just get along? Yeah, I think I made a lot of mistakes there too. Yeah, I think at the end of it all, I feel like I had to really step in and say, "Hey, listen, you guys have to figure it out. I can't come in there with a heavy stick and say, hey, you do this, you do that." The only way you're going to work effectively with someone is constant communication.
Mm,
And I actually feel like that helped me out regardless. I mean, I don't feel like I worked great with every single AE I've had in my professional
of
career.
course.
Sometimes people just have different personalities and
Yeah.
you just don't gel, but that's okay. Honestly, I feel like you just find when you find your groove and you find the people you really kind of understand, but it also means like taking a little bit of a step back and saying, okay, let's find a common goal. And actually, I'm reading a book now called Crucial Conversations, which came out like 20 years ago. It's an
Yeah.
amazing book because I feel like even if you look at a lot of the publications right now, like from Adam Grant, Think Again, a lot of those books really come from Crucial Conversations, and it's really
Mm,
thinking about, hey, we're here for a common goal. You start with, we're here for a common goal.
right.
I want to help you crush your quota. I want us to be a successful
Mm,
team. How do we do that? And it really
yeah.
does mean taking a step back. And, sometimes big egos are hard in sales, right? But it sometimes takes just a step back. And I said, hey, listen, you got to find common ground. You got to find
Yeah.
common ground. Otherwise, if you absolutely can't work together, then, I have more work to do to figure out how to reassign you. But,
Yeah.
at the end of that, it's not, hey, AE, you show up and do your thing, and hey, SE, you show up and do your thing. It's how do we do this together? And how do we work as a team? How do we tell stories? How do we do it together? It's really what it's
Yeah.
all about.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you're saying there, Pam. One of the things that I tell the folks in the workshops that I run, look, if you need to go have a conversation with your AE, maybe they are doing some things that are frustrating that maybe they're not aware of.
Exactly.
As SEs, we want everything served up on the silver platter,
We
right?
do.
Like,
Yeah.
tell us exactly what we're doing, who we're talking to. Like, give us all the answers so we can just like it doesn't work out that way. But if you're going to have a conversation, it should begin with, I think there might be a better way to help you hit your number, or I think there might be another way for us to hit our numbers or for us to succeed in some of these deals. Might you be willing to have a conversation, right? As long as it's always, but one of the mistakes that we make is our own personal agenda gets in the way.
Yep.
Right? Like it's funny. I was talking to somebody last week and they said, we need to learn to let go of our personal agendas. I was like, wow, those are really powerful words, but it's a lot easier than said than done. So Oscar Parr is with us. Oscar, nice to see you. He says, can you speak to that a bit more, Pam? How you manage and handle relationships with the AEs that you work with? Now, you've touched on a few things. what else is there anything else that specifically that you've done that you found, okay, this is actually a best practice that we need to follow?
Yeah, I think it comes down to that, constant collaboration and communication. I mean, the hardest thing now is that we don't really get to see each other, right? We're kind of in this lockdown mode. I've been at Contentful just over a year, and I've never actually met one single person at Contentful face to
So
face.
crazy, right?
Not even the AEs that I work with. So, yeah, that's really hard. I mean, we're all a bit Zoom fatigued. Before the pandemic, I can probably count the number of times I actually had to turn my camera on. Now I turn it on many, many times a day.
All the time.
Yeah, it's more than just having a one-on-one conversation. Everyone, I always say, hey, the basic you got to do is at least have a one-on-one conversation with your AEs to talk about, hey, let's talk about what's happening for the week. But also it's just, I feel like the ones I've been really, really successful with, it's more than just a one-on-one. I mean, honestly, I feel like I probably talk to them every day, and it's always about some kind of collaboration. And really it's also just about building a relationship, because that's the person, is going to have your back. I mean, I have followed, hope they jump on this call today. I have followed many sales reps, account execs into multiple companies because they're people I trusted, right? They're people I loved working with, because we were such a great team that I knew, regardless of wherever they were going to be successful. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I guess I feel super blessed again that I was able to work with people multiple times. Now, did they all work out? No. Did they ever? No. But I feel like that was in building relationships early on. That was always really important to me. I always wanted to be able to build up, people that I really enjoyed working with. And at the end of this, illustrious career that someday, who knows how long that will be, but I just want to look back and say, hey, I made some mistakes, but you know what? I also made some amazing relationships regardless. And I feel like there are people I could still call up today and say, hey, can you help me out here? I have some questions about this, and they would definitely answer the phone.
Yeah. Well, and there's nothing, I've said this so many times, there is nothing like, quote, going into battle with your, your fellow colleagues, right? And when I say going into battle, right, going into those critical meetings, preparing for those critical meetings, right, collaborating, figuring out the right strategy or the right approach, right, and working up. I mean, to your point, there's probably a dozen folks that I could call, on any given time, and they would be, I think they would be delighted to hear from me, because we've had, those moments in battle together. Incidentally, our friend, our collective friend, Alan White is chiming in and saying, hello, Alan, it's good to hear from you as well, my friend. Glad you've tuned in. Do you typically get involved early in the sales process? Do you work with AEs that usually bring you in for discovery, or, talk a little bit about how do you typically interact with AEs early in the sales cycle, and then how does that evolve through the middle of the cycle towards the end?
I like to be involved early and often. I always say when I meet a new AE for the first time, or we're just starting to work together, that's usually the first thing I say is, listen, I want to be involved as much as I can. I want to be involved in discovery. And, we've definitely hired some newer reps who maybe not even as familiar with our technology. If I have to help out with qualification, I'd love to do that too. Honestly, the more times I can have FaceTime in front of a prospect, I feel like that just gives me more credibility. And then I'm not just that person showing up to, wave the magic wand and make you want to buy with my amazing demo. I would really rather that be the case than the other. And definitely I feel like might be maybe because of the SaaS nature of software today, I feel like in the last maybe 5-6 years, it's sort of shifted a little bit. I come from the world of, like you, when you wrote the book, no discovery, no demo, right? No discovery, it ain't going to happen. But, I've definitely softened my stance over the years, because, I've also supported 5-6, AEs at some companies, and it's just, it's a lot. So I appreciate the AEs who only want to bring me in on the things that are super important.
Right.
And with call recording today, sometimes they'll say, well, I did a discovery, here's a recording. And, honestly, I still want to be involved. I say, well, hey, is there still an opportunity for me to ask a few questions? Can I interact? Because I'd rather it be, something that's really more pertinent to them, and maybe I just ask questions differently than you do because I'm focused on certain things. So I try to make them want to, me to collaborate with them again. But I know that real estate, maybe it won't always happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's as you were speaking, one of the thoughts that came to mind is, and my guess is you did this, we sort of have to earn the right to a certain degree, and we have to prove ourselves and prove to our AEs that actually the earlier you bring me in, right, and the more I can just engage with the customer, it's actually better for all of us. But to your point, for some newer AEs, I mean, look, their job is to move things through the funnel as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, as they should. I mean, this is their livelihood, right? This is their job. And so we need to help them understand that actually a little bit of discovery from me is helpful. By the way, I have to, give a shout out to Alan, and he's using a term called demo-scovery. I love that.
Love it.
Now, I've certainly heard the disco demo. I actually have another term that I'm using too called discovery in disguise. What's discovery in disguise? So they come and say, well, they want a demo. Okay, I'll be happy to give the demo, but the purpose of the demo isn't necessarily to convince them of anything. It's to whet their appetite, but then get them talking. So let me ask you this, Pam. After a demo, let's say you've gone into a meeting and maybe there were some things that didn't go quite right. Maybe your sales counterpart said a few things that were, might potentially be taken out of context, or maybe you felt like, you weren't positioned particularly. How do you have that, or I know the answer. I know you go and have a conversation with your AE. How do you approach that with your AE after the fact to have an effective sort of debriefing?
Yeah, I am all about proper feedback loops. And I think we're all scratching the surface at it. I love being able to, I always call it the good, the bad, the ugly, right? You have those meetings afterwards where you talk about, hey, what went well? What didn't go so well? What could we have done better for next time? And then how do we use that as a follow-on to what we did? Because again, as you know, nothing is, it's not always perfect. It may not go the way we thought. And sometimes you've got to be able to be flexible and pivot, right? Everything you prepared, okay, something didn't, turn out the way, or some super exec shows up in the meeting and he wants to derail the whole thing. That happens. Yeah. So how do we get out of that? How do we get out of our own heads, right? Because there's nothing worse for me than not having any feedback and then being spinning it through my head, going oh, wish I had done this. Why didn't I do that? And then the next time, it's almost like PTSD, right? You're thinking about the next time, you're like, oh no, can't do that, right? So I feel like, that's something I would love to be better at. I in theory, it's worked great at some companies, and some companies are just sort of scratching the surface. But yeah, if we can all, and it's, I've been to so many sales trainings at this point. I feel like I take a good nugget away from each one of them. There's always something really good. I know the menu demo is the Peter Cohen, right? Where you go in and you try to do a little discovery, and then you try to have these things at the ready so you can demo. And there's so many good ones, but I've been through one where there's I think it was like Navy SEALs, and how they come in after the fact. They come in and they talk about your egos are at the door, and then you talk about what went right in a a mission or a session or something we did, and everybody gets to kind of have their say, and it's not necessarily critiquing what each one did, but it's kind of going through that good, bad, ugly, and then kind of disassociating from what you did. So I love that. I honestly hope to be able to implement that more in the future.
That's awesome. As you were sharing that Navy SEAL story, I used to be a Zig Ziglar fan. I'm just one of those guys that, is into all that self-help stuff. Sure. But I remember he used to have a saying, and it was something to the effect of, it's not who's right or wrong that matters. It's what's right or wrong that matters. right? And I think that's really what you're talking about, right? Like for a moment, and this is hard. I mean, we're talking about people here, right?
Yeah.
For a moment, but the more we can sort of check our ego at the door, as you said, right? It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not like what's in the best interest of the team and what's in the best interest of the customer, right? And whether we win or lose this one, how can we be better the next time, right? So the more we can have that conversation, the better. Now, let me ask you this. Do you find that this is more difficult, you know, now that we're sort of doing everything, as I like to say, but, you know, through the lens of a camera? Because I know a lot of people that I talk to, and I think it's getting better, although I'm interested to hear from you. A lot of people complain about having back-to-back meetings, and so as a result, people, they have less time to build relationships. They have less time to prepare. They have less time to practice. They have less time to debrief. Are you finding that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like also I've tried to get better at blocking my calendar for things like that, which I wasn't always very good at because, you know, as you know, it's, you know, we're trying to cover a lot of things, right? We're on all these Zoom calls. Yeah, I think we just have to be really better at blocking our calendars to be able to do that. And as a team saying, hey, this is going to benefit us. This is why we're doing it. I think, again, it's sort of an AE preference, right? Some are just natural at doing it. And then, you know, some it's maybe a newer practice where they're, you know, maybe not used to collaborating as much. Maybe they're newer to an AE role. But yeah, I think it's so important for us to really, even if it's just 15 minutes, you know, we don't have to get that formal. We just set the agenda for the next time we talk about it, right? So, hey, remember when we talked about this and this and this, and I think again, it's so important that we get better at it.
We have to make time for it.
Absolutely.
The other thought that I'm inspired, or question I'm inspired to ask, is how much of this falls on the SE? If I'm an SE and maybe I'm working with some AEs who maybe they're newer or maybe they're just busy. I think a lot of times we sit back and as the SE and sort of expect our account executive to sort of take the lead in that regard. If they're not doing it, is it okay for us to be the ones to sort of say, hey, we need to, you know, circle back and double back?
Yeah, I think we should absolutely feel empowered to do that. And I think you're right. I think we're always sort of the kind of on the support side, right? I'm supporting my AEs. It's their quota. But I think if we look at it again as a team, you know, we're focused on the same goal. We all want to be responsible for these opportunities, regardless of how many of them we're juggling at any one time. I think we really have to just feel empowered that we have the ability to do that because we are on the team. You know,
Amen.
You know, I use my football analogies. I'm the Julian Edelman to the Tom Brady, although both of them are retired and my guys. But yeah, I'm definitely an important part of that. So I want to feel like I'm an important part of that.
Really, really well said. So Pam, let me just take a moment to pause, folks. I want to welcome you if you're just joining us. I'm speaking with Pam Dunn. She is a member of the Contentful sales engineer team. She's also, if I'm not mistaken, are you an ambassador with the presales?
Yes, of course. We have to talk about presales collective.
You're an ambassador with the presales collective.
Yes.
She's actually somebody that I have a great deal of admiration for many reasons, but one reason is because she was an SE. She got into management. She was an SE leader, and then she went back into really followed her passion and is now back in the field as an individual contributor. And I said to her last week, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, which is, you know, talking and running workshops, you know, with SEs, I would probably be an individual contributor out in the field over being in management. I just love being in the field. So, you know, like you, I'd be the guy that started my career in the 90s doing COBOL and CICS and DB2 and still out in the field, right? Yes, that'll be our little secret.
I don't know what you're talking about, Chris. That must have been before my time.
You know what? I'm telling you, I say that and I can't believe I'm actually admitting that at times. So I'm inspired to ask you this: when you went from leadership back into an IC role, did you have any new or different perspectives that changed the way you approached the role?
You know, it was during that time. Actually, it was during the I call it the .bomb era, right? When when we were all sort of scrambling after 9/11 to figure out what we were going to do next. Honestly, I did really miss being in the field. That's the one thing about, being an SC leader that I did really miss.
Yeah.
And at the time, again, I as I mentioned, I follow a lot of really amazing account execs, and some opportunities came up where I thought, well, I'll go back in the field for a little while and see what happens. And then look where I am today. I do love it. Honestly, I feel like it's something that I'm super passionate about, although at this point am with things like the Presales Collective and the Presales Academy. I'm just so excited about the next pre-sales people that are coming up to be able to do what I do. So I am really interested in helping grow those folks. Again, who knows, maybe at some point I'll say, I still love being in the field, but eventually, maybe it might be time to hang up my pre-sales. I feel like I learned so much at every stage, regardless, even as I said, as a manager, I've always been interested in, I call it the dynamics of people, right? How people interact with each other. That's what I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a tech nerd at heart. I love what we do. I love being super curious. I love asking questions. I love tinkering with our overall product to try to figure out how it's going to solve certain business issues. For sure, I learned a lot how people interact, how other SCs and AEs work together. I felt I could offer a lot there because I'd been through a lot on my own. Again, I feel like it's just that part that I also missed is just really this kind of interaction face to face with people, because that's really what I enjoy, just seeing how people interact and how, when you've got a huge meeting of, I've been in demos that have had 40, 50 people sometimes, huge organizations, and just kind of watching kind of the groups that, kind of go together and how they are, who's gonna, win over whatever they're trying to put out there for the agenda. I just really love that part of it. So it's kept me in this. I feel like when I talk to folks who are, coming up as new pre-sales folks, I say, number one, if you're curious about this and you just you love asking questions and you love tinkering with things, this is definitely the role for you. You don't have to be a super extrovert. You don't really have to be, specifically any kind of personality type, but you just have to want to, ask a lot of questions. You have to be curious. And I always said I have to be passionate about what I'm presenting to people. Because if I'm not passionate about it, you'll know right away that I'm not passionate about it. So when I talk to people, I just hope it comes across that I'm really excited to get to know them, to find out what's going on, and to be able to, talk about my solution. And that's really what it's always been about.
I suspect it does, and I suspect you do, and I can completely and totally relate to that. I know for me, I felt very similar. If I didn't feel passionate about not only what I was selling, but the problems that I was solving. And it's interesting. I heard a gentleman just a few years ago say very, very concisely, he said, Chris, fall not in love with the product, fall in love with the problem. And to me, that is so powerful, right? And for anybody who might be listening, that would be one of the one of the takeaways is that if you're struggling to find passion in what it is that you're selling, think more in terms of the people you're selling to and the problems that you're solving for them. And by the way, if you don't find passion there, maybe you're selling the wrong thing, because to your point, Pam, particularly sales engineers, I think we have a hard time faking it, right?
I have a hard time faking it, for sure.
Right? I think most of us do. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons some of us are reluctant even to, engineers tend to be reluctant to get into sales, right? Because we think we need to, be, artificial, and nothing could be further from the truth. So, I think that's really a powerful thought. I want to shift gears ever so slightly. Sure. The PSC has come up a few times, the Presales Collective, and I know you're an ambassador, and I don't know exactly know what that means. So do you mind just talking a little bit about what are you doing with the Presales Collective, and what does this role of being an ambassador mean?
Yeah, thanks. The Presales Collective came at a time when I actually was thinking we really need something for pre-sales. So huge shout out to James and Yuji for really being able to turn this into what it's morphed into, which is absolutely amazing. We started out with, as you know, I think you're part of the DC chapter, right? So we started out with all these chapters, and we were all trying to figure it out, right? Doing our own thing and trying to get things moving. And we had some really great events in the Boston area, and I had some great co-founders with me, and we were all trying to scramble to make things happen. And I think what that morphed into as the pre-sales collective is growing up in the next phase. I think we're just trying to really establish the brand. So as an ambassador, I think we're all trying to focus on different geographical regions, but then also kind of talk the same message and really create Pre-Sales Collective as a brand, and on top of that, the Pre-Sales Academy. So, looking forward to 2022 and beyond as we, learn a little bit more about what that's going to entail. Certainly we want to start having, as more of a professional organization where, now you don't have to try to figure it out on your own, right? There's all kinds of resources that you can use to figure out what is this thing called sales engineering, sales consulting. I love the fact that what we do is still, we can't establish the actual name of what we call it.
It's incredible.
It just says a lot, because I feel like, it's different across industries, but then just overall, I feel like there's so much that we can all learn from each other. And that's really what the Pre-Sales Collective is trying to do, and really just giving us a central place to do all of that. And then also grow, as you know, the next wave of amazing pre-sales consultants and engineers.
Well, and I love what you said. And this is one of the reasons I love this. I'm going to say this community, as a whole, and also the pre-sales collective community is this notion of learning that, I think one of the traits of an effective sales engineer, although I wrote about a few of them, is learning, right? And I think the enthusiasm to share and to help others learn. Incidentally, Oscar made a shout out for the Pre-Sales Collective. More importantly, we have a very timely question from my friend Andy Ryan. Andy, good to see you, my friend. One question is, how can we encourage more people to get into the sales engineer profession? I think Andy makes a really good point here. I suspect you have some thoughts. I certainly do. But Pam, what comes to mind to you when you hear that question or see that question?
Yeah, and through some of the events that we had in Boston, I've had the privilege of meeting some amazing folks that don't come from traditional roles, and I think we really have to start thinking about how do we encourage people from, I know you and I both came from kind of the services side, right? Or where a lot of folks did. I think there is just so many amazing people that can, use the resources to understand what we do and what this role entails. I feel like there's a ton of, product managers, product marketing managers, folks from kind of different walks of life. It's interesting, when I moved over to PeopleSoft, they had this huge hiring. At the time, they were looking for people in industry roles that would make really good, pre-sales engineers. And as I mentioned, even during my Coda days, they hired a lot of CPAs and accounting folks who, that's when accounting software was really new. So I feel like there are people in industry roles that actually could also take advantage of this. I talked to lots of people who send me LinkedIn messages. Hey, what do you think about this? Where can I find these resources? And I point them right to the Pre-Sales Collective. Honestly, I feel like this is the best time to figure out whether or not this would be a good role for you. I think I'm going to point one of the things out in your book, which I love so much. You're going to be a part of sales. So you have to know right from the get-go that you are now part of sales. So if sales is something you don't really like, or you never want to be a part of, I would probably say that maybe this wouldn't be the thing for you. But again, how will you know until you actually explore it? And now that there are resources like the Pre-Sales Collective, I feel like there's so much more available to you than we ever had in the past.
Well, and if I can build on that, your point is a really good one. And you know, I talked about this in the book. I mean, when I first got in the role, right? I mean, I still thought of myself as the technical guy,
Exactly.
really, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'm just here to talk about enterprise architecture. I'm not here to sell anybody anything, right? And I suspect there may be a lot of people that when they first hear that question, are you comfortable with sales, might be very quick to say, no, I don't, you know. But that's if you correlate sales with the used car sales
Yeah,
professional,
exactly.
right? The truth is that to sell is to serve,
To serve,
right? To sell is to solve, right? So I think a lot of us need to change. Now there are certain things that we need to do, right? I mean, another one of the things I like to say is, "Thou shalt not confess, voluntarily confess thy sins," right? I mean, right? There's sort of two sides to that. But I think and this is a critical point. By the way, Alan mentioned a critical point.
Yes.
This notion that, look, he came. In fact, this was the point I was trying to bring up. He came from a design and development and marketing background, and have you considered sales engineer changed his life? And then I actually didn't.
Yeah, I love it.
Domain expert. So Alan makes a really good point here, and that's one of the observations that I've made. In fact, I've had a number of people come to me and say, do you need to be technical to get into to pre-sales or sales engineering? And the interesting answer is not anymore, right? Now, look, there are many software companies and technology companies where you do need deep technical expertise, right?
Absolutely.
If you're, like the data world is exploding, right? Security. You need to have a data security, exactly, right? I mean, companies like, I don't know, Citrix and Cisco and network companies, right? You need a background in that. But the number of software companies that are out there that are selling to marketing people and salespeople and finance people and I mean, the list goes on and on. Manufacturing, people. I mean, if you have a background, if you have an expertise in any of those, I mean, for crying out loud, like when you and I got out of college, nobody other than the IT people knew what an application was, right? Now my mom, who's in her 80s, talks about the apps on her phone, right? I mean, software has become completely and totally democratized, and everybody understands, software and applications. So this is no longer, now you and I, you mentioned I'm a self-proclaimed propeller head, back in the day anyways.
I am too.
Right? But we don't have to be. And I totally think that's the key point. So, and by the way, if you can believe it, we've already been at this for 40 minutes. So
how are we going to find stuff to talk about for that long, Chris?
Time always flies by, and we have so many people weighing in. I gotta say a quick shout out to my colleague Bill. There's at least one or two more things that I wanted to touch on, and then I've got a little lightning round of questions that I'm going to ask you. Awesome. By the way, if we have anybody else who's still with us, if you care to say hello or ask Pam a question, or of course myself, please feel free. But when you and I spoke last week, you mentioned that one of your favorite, and by the way, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the nice things you've said about the book and the framework, but you said that you really love the section, the habit number 5. Perform, and partially because that's what you love about the role, which in case it's not obvious, is what I love about the role, right? I love having an audience and waving my hands and being that guy.
I'm trying not to wave them too much today, Chris.
Tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, sort of that feeling in the spotlight, and how do you sort of get yourself ready to deliver, and then how do you sort of keep yourself? Are there certain things that you do to sort of keep yourself in the moment?
Sure. Ooh, that's a good one. How do you keep yourself in the moment? Actually, I feel like it all leads up to the perform, right? Although I love the perform part, it's really about the prep. It's really about the practice. I call it the 3 Ps. You got the prep, you got the practice, you got the perform, right? And all the other stuff that goes with that. But really, I feel like the perform, you're usually, for me, I feel hopefully that I'm ready. I've done enough prep. Definitely been part of organizations where I've, pulled the all-nighters and prepped on things that may have been a little shaky. But I think what makes me come back to the perform is just that that feeling, when it's resonating with some, right? It's really less about, I'm an extrovert. I like to perform. I like to talk to people, but it's really more about seeing people's faces when you're showing them something, or when they start answering their own questions, that I really love. So although I love the perform part, it's really more about engaging the audience and getting them to buy into what you've spent all that time, prepping and practicing and getting ready to perform. So that's the part that I really love. I mean, honestly, we know they don't always get there, right? You don't always have people with the aha moment. And sometimes, some stuff just happens and it may not be the best, but I guess I feel like I take away, I always ask people, hey, if it's okay with you, I'd like to, first of all, I want to answer every question you're going to ask me, but the reality of that happening, it may not happen. So, do I have your permission to take away anything that, I might need to, follow up on, and then we could set another time for another follow-on demo or whatever. And I feel like earning that right to be able to actually engage and ask questions. It's less about, don't get me wrong, there's been plenty of demos when I'm like, okay, we have stuff we have to get through, but I don't want to be the only one performing and talking. I want it to be a dialogue. I want us to be interacting, right? I want to be able to have that part. And that's really what I love more than anything. And then, I love if we hit the mark and they're engaged and excited about what you're doing. So I think that's always kept me coming back, regardless of the ones that didn't really make it. I think that's what I always loved most about it.
So, those words resonate with me so much. It's that dynamic in the meeting where you're connecting, you're relating. And I do think that I think many of us who succeed in this role, we're natural problem solvers. I think to a certain degree, we're natural people pleasers, right? We want to help people. Sure. And what came to mind for me as you were speaking, I call it the warm blanket. What do I mean by the warm blanket? Like, when you walk in and you're meeting with people that they're struggling with something. They're trying to accomplish something, or they're tired of the network going down, or they're tired of this, or this is too difficult, or they're trying to achieve this, and you show up with the answer, right? You show up with the solution that they've not seen before, right? That's new and different, and you get almost this sense of satisfaction and contentment, as I like to say, right? And they're cold, and we show up with the warm blanket, right? Like, I love that feeling, and that's what I'm hearing when you say what you said there. Does that resonate with you, Pam? That notion of the warm blanket.
I love the warm blanket. Definitely resonates with me when I'm definitely a hugger when this pandemic's over. Look out, my colleagues, because I'll be sorry. I'm going to just say it right now. I'll be hugging you all.
Okay, so if you get nothing else from this conversation, just be warned, when the pandemic's gone, Pam is out on a mission to hug all of the colleagues that she hasn't met yet.
That's right. So, I promise I won't hug prospects unless they want me to, but yeah, I love the warm blanket analogy. I love that.
Fantastic. So Pam, again, you've been unbelievably gracious with your time, and I so appreciate you joining. I do want to ask you a few questions. Sure. But before we get to that little lightning round, any other thoughts from you? We talked a little bit with partnership with sales, and I have a feeling you're going to be running around hugging all your AEs as soon as you can. We've talked a little. You mentioned, you used the word curiosity. I think curiosity is such a critical thing. We talked a little bit about the pre-sales collective and sort of encouraging and bringing up this new sort of generation of sales engineers, if I can use that term. And we talked about perform. Any other thoughts that you care to share for the SE audience before I get to my final couple questions?
Yeah, I think as we're hopefully moving out of this phase, and we get to have more at some point on-site meetings, I think it's super important as we go out into the world that we really think even more so about the collaboration, right? It really needs to be. Sometimes it's almost easier on Zoom when you're you're trying to do your thing, the AE does their thing. I think sometimes it makes it a little bit easier where you can kind of remain a little bit disjointed. So I hope, we take away from this that, SCs just want to be part of the process. So, give them a seat at the table, let them help you. We want to help you. We want to be better partners. We really do. And I feel like I've heard that from lots of pre-sales folks out there. So, I would take this opportunity to encourage all of the account execs out there, if any are actually still watching, let us partner with you. We can offer a lot of things, even, people like me who've been around a long time. I've seen a lot, but I don't know everything, but I would love to have a seat at the table and be your partner. And I think that's really the biggest thing that we can take away from this.
Those words are so powerful, Pam, and I'm inspired to share sort of the other side of what I believe that coin is, which is, once given the opportunity to engage, to be part of the process, be part of the team by your AE, we as SEs, we need to earn the right? Yep, and we need to justify, our seat at the table, right? And that's where it really becomes a two-way street. And we need the opportunity, we need to be engaged, but we also need to step up to the plate when given that opportunity. So, by the way, I'm assuming Amy is one of your colleagues, and
Amy is she's my director. Yes, so she's amazing and.
Very good. Well, she apparently is eager for the hug as well. All right, so we're going to do what I call the lightning round. We're only it should only take a few minutes. I've got 3 questions. The first question, and I call this tech sales advice. So I'm going to invite you to consider a particularly valuable piece of advice that you received maybe early in your career or along the journey that really changed the way you went about your profession and your career. And what might that be?
Wow, that's a good one. I feel like a long time ago when I started this out, I feel like a manager once told me, I think I was being moved into more of a being pushed more towards sales, I guess, given the opportunity to do that. And I questioned, well, why me? Why do you want me to do this? And I remember her saying, that you're assertive yet not aggressive, and you're confident yet not. I can't remember what the last one was, but eventually, I guess her whole goal was to sort of push me towards, I like that you are able to kind of not really stand up for yourself, but also just, again, this whole curiosity thing. I always want to ask a question, because if it's not something that I understand, I don't want to be aggressive when I'm doing it, but I definitely want to get an answer. So sometimes I might push a little bit. So I think that was huge advice for me. And I think as a young 20-something-year-old, I was like, oh, somebody believes in me. Yay. Okay. This is great. So that was huge advice. I always took it to heart when I came over from services that people told me, you don't have to build out an entire solution when you're demoing. So that was huge advice, because I think as you and I both talked about, coming from a side where you're actually implementing to your pre-sales role. I think James Cake has said it best from the Pre-Sales Collective, that I think I told you, you're building a Hollywood movie set, not an entire house, city, whatever. And so as you collaborate with your AEs, it's important for them to know which door to ask you to open or which window to ask you to crash through, because some of those might not work. So that's where the collaboration
Make sure you're asking me to crash through the right window, because I will crash through it, but let's make sure it's the right one.
Because you never know what's going to happen on the other side. Yeah, exactly. So I think
that's classic.
That was huge advice, and it's definitely I've learned a lot along the way as
I love it.
Move forward.
I love it. All right, question number 2. Yes. I'm going to reverse the tables a little bit. You and I have just walked into an elevator together with our masks on, of course.
Ooh, of course.
And we're we're going up to the 20th floor. So we've got 20 floors in an elevator, no more and no less. And I turn to you and I say, Pam Dunn, I just saw you on LinkedIn Live the other day. I'm a new SE. I just got my first job as an SE. Any advice?
Yes, I suggest if you haven't already joined the Presales Collective, you should do so, because there's a ton of resources and research and certifications that I would highly recommend to you that are just going to help you be better at this craft, because it really is a craft. You're going to learn a lot along the way. You're going to try things out. Some stuff's going to work, some stuff's not going to work, but it's a great place for you to be able to go and learn everything there is to know about what we do. And then on top of that, there's a great Slack community that you can ask any question, and you don't have to feel like, that might be a stupid question, because all of us have asked that question at some point, and everyone has been so generous with their time to help new folks. So I would highly suggest that as well.
I love that. Now, I'm going to follow my question with, if I get one thing right, what does that need to be?
Answer a question with a question.
Oh, that was good. That was really good. Very, very well played. I love that response.
It definitely serves you well. And sometimes, you're just trying to get to an answer, but if you ask another question, you usually get to the right answer quicker.
So powerful. One of my favorite concepts. All right, so my final question actually sort of falls a little bit in line. That was actually a good segue, because my final question for you is, if you could ask me one question, what might it be?
Yes, I would ask you, Chris, what's the best advice you've given to one of your clients recently that kind of changed the way they do things today?
So very good question, by the way. And the thing that comes to mind is actually something that we touched on a moment ago. And this literally happened during a workshop. And the person said something, they said something to the effect of, I get what you're saying. Like, we really just need to let go, right? Like, we just need to let go. And I said, you're close, but I think you're missing one point. We need to let go of our agenda, right? But not let go of the desire to serve the customer, not let go of the desire to help and solve problems, right? Just letting go sounds to me like giving up. And giving up is not a good way to go, right?
Not an option.
And it's interesting when you were talking about the advice that you got, where it sounds like someone sort of helped you better understand your own self when they said, you have a certain assertiveness about you without being aggressive. The thought that came to mind is kind of like, there are times that we get assertive with our kids. Why? Because we know what's in their best interest.
Yeah, sure.
It's actually okay to get assertive with clients if we're doing so in a way that's in their best interest. Because sometimes we actually know better than they do, just because we're experts in the field. Like, we've been doing this for years. We do this with hundreds of clients every year. We are paid to have, ideally, we're paid to have more insight than you are, right? We need to know where the line is. Yes. But as long as we're talking in the, or from the stance of, this is what's in, so to go back to the point I made, be prepared to let go of your agenda.
I think that's great advice.
And focus on the customer. Pam, you have been such, by the way, I have to say hello to my good friend, John Busey. So John, funny enough, so John and I were, quote, an arranged marriage professionally, like literally like 20 years ago.
Oh, that's funny.
And he had a client, and he and I had a mutual client, and he was running a consulting organization, and we were paired up, and John and I just clicked, and we had lost touch, but he and I have reconnected recently. John, my friend, it's always good to see you, sir. I appreciate you saying hello.
the best part about LinkedIn and these kind of networks.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, what are we going to do with this LinkedIn thing years ago when it first came out? Oh, we're going to put a resume, and now look where we are. I'm LinkedIn Live.
It's amazing, right? It's amazing. Pam, thank you so much for joining us. How can people find you? I know you said something about Presales Collective. Obviously, they can find you on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to give any sage advice that I can to anyone looking to try to break into pre-sales. And certainly, you can send me messages through LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect in that way. And I would love to continue the conversation with folks. So thank you for having me on. I feel so blessed to be here today. And so thank you again.
Well, thank you for joining. Good luck with the Presales Collective and ambassadorship and all the work that you're doing there. Continued good luck with Contentful, and I hope you get out on the world tour to give your hugs in short order. And to those of you who hung around till the end, thank you so much for joining. It's always a pleasure. As a reminder, you can follow all these if you follow #TechSalesAdvice. So if you like these and want to get notified, I encourage you to follow the hashtag. And of course, if you know of anybody else who might be interested, please join. Pam, hang around just for a minute after we shut down, and we'll say a few parting words. Otherwise, folks, thank you so much for dialing in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks everyone.
All. Bye-bye.